What's going on, guys? So I just wanted to make a relatively quick video talking about corner pressure with Ken. So let's see if we can adjust that camera a little bit. So a lot of people, the main goal, one of the main goals you should have when you're playing Ken is going to be to get your opponent to the corner. So in case you aren't aware, in case you're a really new player, one of the greatest strengths that Ken has is actually corner carry. So what do I mean by that? So you can do like 2 combos, or even in some cases 1 combo, 1 special, right? And your opponent will be virtually in the corner, okay? Minus a little bit of space sometimes. But it's very easy to walk somebody down oftentimes and just get them directly into the corner. So what do I mean by that? I mean, let's take if I can jump. So you can see right there, you get, a pretty substantial amount of corner carry. Again, you can see 2 combos and your opponent is already in the corner. And, virtually all Ken's combos give you like significant corner carry compared to a lot of the other characters in the cast. There are still some characters in the cast that have very good corner carry too, but specifically with Ken, this is one of the big pluses that he has. You see, so it's like even combos that you wouldn't think would carry the opponent too much, right? Like I said, virtually any combination of 2 combos is gonna land your opponent right there in the corner. And my hair is a little messed up. I just got out of the shower. So anyways, talking about corner pressure. So there's, I think, one like very basic big thing you need to be aware of when you're cornering in the pressure, pressuring in the corner. Can't even talk. And that's spacing. So what we'll get, and this isn't, of course, a lot of things can happen in the game. I always try to preface things with saying the game is very dynamic. Nothing is ever guaranteed to work at any given time. But you can do things to help you maintain that position. So when it comes to pressuring your opponent in the corner, of course, oftentimes this will come about as a knockdown situation, and or you can walk them into the corner. However, which way you choose to do that. Let's just say you're already there, right? So usually you'll start off with some wake up option, or you'll grab. But one of the key things to note is first off, you want to pay attention to your opponent's meter. So if you see that your opponent has EX meter and they have, like a Shoto does, an invincible reversal, or they have V trigger available, okay? Those are all things you need to be thinking of. You also should be looking at their health and seeing how much health they have. So these are things you constantly want to pay attention to throughout the match, because in the same way that you know exactly when you get V trigger or when you have EX meter most of the time, right? Depending on the pace of the match, you know that you want to activate, right? Or you know that you have the option available to you to do an invisible reversal on your wake up to get the opponent off you. So your opponent is going to be thinking about these same things, and they're also going to be thinking about whether or not they have life lead or you have life lead in any given situation, right? So those are things you constantly have to be paying attention to when you're talking about maintaining things like corner pressure and the decisions that you're going to be making on how to pressure your opponent. Okay, so but to start off with, the most basic thing I want you to think about is going to be spacing. So when it comes to, let's say after you grab your opponent, like if you were to dash after that with Ken, you would be negative. So you can see I'm like, it's -2. Yeah, -2. So they can press a button if I were to dash immediately after a grab and they reacted to it. So that's something you have to keep in mind if you're trying to do quote-unquote throw loops. And it seems like, and you can use that to your advantage too. Like if you know your opponent is going to tech or something like that, you could just, you know, do one of those and then punish them, like whiff punish them if they try to tech, try to grab. Okay, so that's one thing you could do, but specifically to annoy your opponent and really start to have them feel the pressure. Oftentimes, like if I have life lead, I'll just literally sit like right outside their range. And you know, you can give it a little bit of time. And you know, for example, with Ryu will try to activate off of sweep, right? So staying right outside Ryu's range. You know, you can whiff punish because Ryu, I'm using Ryu's sweep. I'm using Ryu's sweep as an example to show you like a character and one of their favorite activation buttons. So I don't want him to keep doing that, so I'm just gonna take it off real quick. But you get the idea. So Ryu players will all the time activate off of sweep. So if you know, for example, they have V trigger readily available, and you know that Ryu activates off sweep, that's something that you can use to your advantage to pressure your opponent, and you could look out for the sweep preemptively, because it's almost like, I'm telling you, once you start playing this game enough, you're gonna see all the habits that characters will typically have. It's only really when you start getting to high level play that you start to see things really change. But in the lower ranks, you know, Kens love activating, even in higher ranks, really, Kens love activating off medium punches into V trigger. So if you're playing against a Ken player, that's something that you can use to your advantage. Kens also love activating off of Fireball. You know, you'll see this combo very often done into V trigger activation. So essentially what I'm getting at is to make this video really short, know the buttons that characters like to press in order to activate their V trigger, because when you're in the corner, you're trying to get out of it because you know that is a very dangerous position to be in. Games can literally end in like less than 10 seconds because you're in the corner. Okay, like that's how how important it is to position yourself properly so that does not happen. Even characters that would be quote unquote low tier in the corner, they thrive. You know, Shoto characters, Alex, Jury, all these characters, if they got you in the corner, they can do a lot of damage to you, and the opportunity there is just like virtually infinite, right? So keeping your range outside of the button presses and staggering your pressure, okay? Knowing your character and their ability to really pressure well. For example, like if you're a Ken player, one thing you're going to be tempted to do in the corner, and I'm going to tell you right now, this is something that you should try to limit as much as possible, and there's a reason why a lot of high level players don't do this too much, and that's throwing out heavy kick. Okay, if you're throwing this out as an Oki option, like a meaty option after a knockdown, so let's say you knock down your opponent after a grab and you want to throw out a heavy kick on their wake up, first off, try to space it properly, because Ryu can punish that with a light kick, like since it is -4. So space it properly if you're gonna use it, or like as a wake up option. And if you're gonna throw it out as anything else, especially like in this matchup, let's say, try to only do it when you have V trigger, because that way, you know, you make it as safe as possible, so to speak, right? So yeah, staying out of your opponent's range, knowing the buttons that your opponent likes to use to activate things like V trigger, keeping it at like jump distance as well. Like right outside their range is usually also around the jump distance for a lot of characters, and you can just literally sit here and crouch medium punch you know, if you're with Ken or DP or whatever, you know, if they're trying to jump out of the corner, which many people often to do, you know, because it could just be an easy way to escape besides like fighting your way out, you know. So if you could jump out of the corner, that's oftentimes very helpful as well. So yeah, jumping out of the corner, that's something you got to be watching out for. Staying out of their range, waiting for them. Like if you have life lead, that's something you could really use to your advantage, because you can literally just stay outside their range, you know, because you have life lead, and you can pretty much wait for them to do something oftentimes. I'm not saying you should do that all the time, because some characters can be harder to deal with that way. But that is something you can use to your advantage. And just gradually, like a very good corner pressure button is going to be stand medium punch. The range on it is very good. And it's also one of Ken's preferred whiff punish tools. So for whiff punishing, I mean, you can use virtually most buttons, but Ken's best buttons, in my opinion, are going to be his medium punches, specifically his stand medium punches because of the range, and also his crouch medium kick. So definitely, you can definitely whiff punish with stand medium kick as well. It might take a little bit more effort to be ready for that kind of thing. And also, this is just a slower button. That one frame, like for example, this is 7 frames, this is 8 frames, right? So that 1 frame difference might not seem like much, but when reaction times are literally measured in milliseconds, that 1 frame difference can be the difference between you actually hitting your opponent and missing the whiff punish and hitting them on block. So yeah, these buttons are usually the preferred buttons if your opponent is whiffing, you know, especially in the corner. So you could be looking out for them to press buttons and, you know, whiff punishing with your medium buttons essentially. So, and then you can also use this as an opportunity if you have a fireball character like Ken to, you know, stay outside the range and throw fireballs. One thing you want to keep in mind when you're throwing fireballs, if you're doing it, you know, repetitively, is that you want to be throwing out feints to bait out jumps with those fireballs. If you're just throwing out fireballs, all your opponent has to do is react to the movement of your character. Whenever they see you, you know, in the startup of something, they're just going to jump on reaction. You can't react to the fireball, but you can react to the movement. And if you throw out a jab, that will give you enough recovery time to throw out an anti-air as well. So, and you can also take these things and weigh them out with risks. So I'm going to tell you right now, my playstyle in particular tends to be pretty dang risky. It's just the way I prefer to play. I have more fun that way. I'm not going to say it's the smartest thing in the world, but you can weigh out the risks. So let's say, for example, you want to get back in with Ken, like you want to be point blank range. Okay, let's say you want to throw in some run cancels in there with Ken. All right, God, you can run cancel virtually anything, right? Like you can run cancel that. So I mean, you can run cancel virtually every one of Ken's normals, right? Even if that were to hit like non-crush counter, you could still run cancel that. You can run cancel Ken's sweep. Okay, that's one of the beautiful things about Ken's V-skill run, right? So, but let's say if you want to make that as safe as possible, it's still not safe. And if I'll tell you this right now, higher levels, people are very keen on reacting to the V-skill runs, even at the safest point. So if you, let's say on block, so I can just show you the frame data here. So we're just gonna put guard off. So the safest button is going to be stand medium punch when it comes to canceling into a run. If you're trying to do that as a pressure tool. So let's say, yeah, let's say you get your opponent, and this is usually what I try to do. If you feel like your opponent is really like feeling the pressure, they are just sitting there turtling, you know, because they're afraid to do anything because you're pressuring them. You know, oftentimes I'll throw out medium punch into V-skill run cancel. like I said, it's a risk. You know, if you're trying to play super safe, less view skill runs are always going to be better. But this entire game is like risk versus reward, you know. So if you don't feel the need to ever V-skill run, you know, just because you feel like doing it, then don't do it. But I'm just showing you this to show you if you were to do that, these are some of your options. So and I will say this, oftentimes a combo that I'll do, just to kind of give you an idea of certain things you could do. So oftentimes I'll do that, and that tends to be pretty successful. Because even though it's so weird, like this medium kick V-skill run cancel is -11, but because a lot of characters will expect like a fireball after medium kick, a lot of times their reaction to the V-skill run after the medium kick is going to be a little delayed, and that can very oftentimes actually give you an opportunity to get in before they react properly and actually, you know, get counter hit combos on them. So and you can condition your opponent to set up those V-skill run cancels, right? So essentially, you know, if you're constantly pressuring your opponent and and you're never throwing out V-skill runs after doing certain things, use that to your advantage, you know, because this is all psychological, it's all conditioning. So you can use it to your advantage, the fact that you aren't V-skill running after, say, throwing medium punches and then just randomly hit them with one of those. You know, it's all about mixing it up as well, mixing up your offense and keeping your opponent guessing. But just know, you know, it's a risk, but it is an option, and very oftentimes it will pay off. Another thing, you know, so we got spacing, paying attention to your opponent's meter to influence your decisions, you know, on whether or not you actually need to pressure just with buttons, or whether or not you can just sit there in their face. Okay, so another thing I want to talk about when I'm talking about spacing is, you know, don't think, and pressuring is to not think that just like pressing buttons on your opponent's block is all pressuring is. Pressuring is also just sitting in front of their damn face. So I'll give you an example. There are certain tough matches for Ken, like a lot of zoning characters tend to be really tough for Ken. I was fighting a Falcon the other day, a Falcon player, and for me personally, Falcon can be pretty tough. I'm not gonna say Falcon's top tier, but Falcon definitely, a good Falcon can definitely be very annoying to a Ken player. Okay, and I said, you know what? I'm not gonna try to take all these risks or anything like that. What I'm gonna do in neutral is I'm just literally going to sit here and stagger walk and block every time Falcon presses a button, because you know Falcons, they love throwing out their heavy buttons and you know, hitting you from like over here, you know, when you can't punish anything, right? So what I ended up doing, this was like a super diamond Falcon player, pretty high win percentage as well, and I was just literally just stagger blocking and walking like this, and that Falcon must have hit me like 15 times in a row with the staff, just like bam, 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 bam. But what I was doing is I was pressuring that Falcon. It ain't nothing to eat some chip, okay? Take the chip health, because if you just get one combo on them, it's going to basically negate that entire time they were trying so hard to you know, hit you with something, but you were blocking literally everything they were doing. Just picture about how frustrated you get as a player when you're trying to pressure somebody, right, with buttons, and you can't open them up. They are not cracking. And you try to get in, and they tech all your grabs, right? They tech everything, even after you do, you know, jab into like a tick throw. They'll tech it. You know, they're basically negating all you're doing. Is that not one of the most annoying things to deal with in this game? It absolutely is. So when you're talking about pressuring your opponent, just blocking and getting in their face is a very psychologically destructive technique, strategy you can use in this game to gain that edge. And then with that Falcon player, going back to that, what I ended up doing, after they hit me so much, they have no idea when I'm gonna actually do something. So the entire time she was hitting me with that staff, every time, bam, 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 like 15 times in a row, right? And you could just see like the gray health was like a quarter of my damn overall health bar. But guess what? Then one time I decided to jump, and she threw out the staff and she missed. And the entire game just cascaded off that one jump in, and I destroyed that Falcon player. And it was a 2-0 match in the set. And I know for a fact that Falcon player was probably thinking like, damn, man, it's like, what the hell can I do? You know, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to hit him, and don't get me wrong, like, I was still getting hit sometimes. Like, it's never going to be a perfect thing. Or more often than not, you're still going to get hit sometimes, right? You're going to get knocked down, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, doing what you have to in order to pressure your opponent in order to gain the advantage. So, yeah, I mean, that's just an example of pressuring your opponent, not simply being limited to actually pressing buttons, you know, and hoping to hit them with something. It can literally just be the spacing and being right in their face and them being, you know, terrified about what you're going to do next. So keep that in mind, and just blocking, you know, like I said, if your opponent has meter and you know they're getting kind of antsy, don't be afraid to just sit there and block, you know, on their wake up and just wait for the DP, you know, like, and just wait for the invisible reversal, the EX DP. And then you can score massive amounts of damage off of that. I can't tell you how many times, you know, I'll be like on a roll, just like, you know, beating somebody up in the game, right? And then I get to the point where I know they're going to DP, and I'll just sit there and block. And when they miss that first DP, what often happens, and you can think about this because it's probably happened to you before too, is after you miss that first DP, you get real desperate because you're like, fuck, man. They took like 2/3 of my life at this point, and, you know, they blocked that DP. I'm about to die. It's do or die. What is it to sit there and block again, you know, on their wake up when they, you know, they're desperate at that point, right? You know, they got to do DP or they're going to do something, right? Try to tech or press the button on wake up. Like, what is it to sit there and block if you got like hella life lead and just know and just wait for what they're going to do? If you know they got meter and all this stuff, and you know they're the type of person, the type of player to spend it just based on what you've been observing about their gameplay, you know, what is it to just sit there and block on their wake up? That's pressure. That's pressure. You know, yeah, I know I'm getting like pretty deep with this kind of stuff, but what you'll come to appreciate if you play these games for a very, very long time is that this is all psychology right here, right? It's getting into your opponent's head, not letting them get into yours, and just doing whatever you can to use the tools that your character has to their best ability in order to gain positioning, gain momentum in the match, gain the advantage, whichever way you see fit. Okay, and these are just like psychological tips I'm trying to give you guys to help you maintain a lot of that pressure. So again, spacing, observing the meter, don't be afraid to just be in their face and not do anything for some time, because that is very psychologically like stressing to a lot of people. Yeah, mix up your offense, okay? And I guess one last thing, because this video is already 24 minutes long, that I'll touch on with Ken. A lot of people will actually complain about Ken's overhead. And I know this because I asked this in one of the big Street Fighter groups the other day. I said, do people actually complain about Ken's overhead? And, you know, high-level players don't complain too much about that, but I'm not saying that it's not viable or it doesn't cause issues, because I'm going to tell you right now, I love Ken's overhead. I feel it's one of the few things that Ken has going for him. It can blow up in your face if you're not careful, which is why I feel it's balanced and not broken or anything like that, because if your opponent blocks that, that's -7, right? And like, you can space it, you know, pretty dang well, but I love doing that to finish matches right there. You know, if you're in an end game situation, doing it from that distance is actually very strong. Very strong. A lot of people will be confused as to how to block that. So anyway, Ken's overhead. It's one of the few things I feel Ken has in terms of playing like more mind games with his actual like button pressing, so to speak, if you get what I'm saying. Like, because a lot of times you'll see people do that and then just kind of like walk back and forth, right? Or you see people do this, right? You know, and that's all fine and dandy. This is just another tool that you can use. So overhead feints. So usually what I'll do in a match is I'll take the chance if I get a knockdown, and because I want to use that overhead because I think it's really strong, the damage potential in the corner and all this stuff. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll throw it out at a random point during the match and I'll see how my opponent reacts to it. So if they block it, I record that in my head, and then next time I throw it out, I might try grabbing them, right? And this is very tricky to time, so this takes a lot of practice, you know, timing overhead feints into media options and things like that, okay? But just to kind of throw it out there. So I'll see the way they react to the overhead initially, like if they block it. If I eat a punish initially, I'm like, okay, it's worth it to me for that information very often. So I'll throw it, and like if they block it or if they tack, when I throw out the feints right there to try to you know, anticipate the grab option for that faux mix-up, right? Then I'll throw it out, and I might go low next time, right? So it just it all depends on the person. So if you see that you throw it out and they just get hit by it, you know, just know your combo potential. Off that is like your damage potential is very high, which is why people hate the overhead. So I mean, you can get some pretty crazy stuff. Hold up, let me show you guys. That's no bar 374. Hold up. One bar 416 off an overhead, but that has to be counter hit +5, so they have to press a button while they're crouching in order for I mean, realistically, you're probably not gonna hit that combo, but you will hit this. That into double DP. I can't even time it now, of course. And you can cancel that into critical art. And you can just get a massive amount of damage off that overhead. 531 off a counter hit, right? So, or let's say you feint overhead. You can get crouch medium kick into fireball double TP. This is V trigger, of course. Or you can do this if you want. If the timing you feel like has to be a little bit more precise, you can get that into double DP. Of course, you can cancel that into critical art if you have the meter as well. You can do this. It's also a viable option. You can do this. You know, also a very viable option. So you can see the potential with Ken's overhead is clearly there, right? It's clearly there. So don't be afraid to use this. I even use it against high-level players. I'm going to tell you that right now. I know, like, you see a lot of pro Kens, they hardly ever throw this out, you know, and I get why they don't, because it's either 24 or 26 frames of startup to actually get it. And when you're talking about pro-level players, very high-level players, they can react to that very easily, okay? And to be honest with you, I think most anybody should be able to react to the startup of that overhead. So, but even with that, like I said, it's a thing of knowing when to use it. Even just throwing it out there will put the overhead just in your opponent's head and just give them another thing to worry about, right? And also just keep in mind, you got the quicker one too, right? And if you hit that counter hit, you can actually combo that one too. So, but you really have to be looking for that because it's only +3 on counter hit. Whereas if you're hitting that one on counter hit, it's +5. So, but even out of V-trigger, that's another very common combo that I'll go for as well. So if you're mid-screen, I'm just gonna throw this out. Hold up. That's risky. It can work. If they are, hold up. Yeah, you gotta be like point blank range to do that. So it's very risky. Oftentimes what you see a lot of people do is this. And that's pretty solid damage. And you can cancel that into critical art as well. The timing can be a little bit quick. I just want to show you the damage potential you can get off a combo like that, off an overhead into light punch DP mid screen 467. So just know you got different options there. So if you're feigning that into low non V trigger, that's a very common combo. Hold up. That's 279 off counter hit right there. So that's pretty solid damage. And if you don't want to spend the meter, just go straight into heavy punch DP. So yeah, I mean, you got options with the overhead. I use it a lot. I think, you know, you can use it at virtually any level. You just have to be smart about using it. And just know that's a very powerful tool in the right hands to use as a means of pressuring your opponent and getting them to open up as well. So this video is already 30 minutes long. I've been talking my head off. If you see this video, you're a Ken player, you got any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I know every damn thing about Ken, because I don't. But you know, there's a lot of things that I've tried that seem to work pretty well, so I could just speak to my knowledge playing the game. And we're always trying to grow here, right? So if you enjoyed the video, you know, like, sub to the channel. But until next time, guys, have a good one.